This is Giovanni Costa. He's about to click the move that wins the San Antonio Regional Championships. It's his first ever regional win, a well-earned title after nearly a decade of playing at VGC tournaments. And the fact that he's made it to this point probably didn't surprise anybody who's familiar with his time in Pokemon. But the way he did it might have. Since Regulation D dropped just before the 2023 World Championships, VGC had seen 10 tournaments at the regional, international, or world level with at least 200 players. Every single one of them had been won by a team featuring Rapid Strike Urshifu. That is, until Giovanni was the last one of 523 players standing in San Antonio. His team also had an Urshifu. But it was the Dark-type Single-Strike Urshifu, the first time this form had ever been crowned a champion. Today, we're going to dive into the differences between the Urshifu forms that made Rapid Strike the dominant force in the VGC meta and how Giovanni found a way to finally let Single Strike thrive and topple Rapid Strike's dominance in San Antonio. And before we get too deep into the weeds, special thanks to Stuart Rutherford of the Top Cut Explorer project, without whom the statistics portion of this video wouldn't be possible, or at least would have been much more time consuming. We've linked the project in the description, so please be sure to give it a look. Alright, let's do this. Urshifu was a specter looming over Gen 9 VGC ever since we found out it would be returning after its debut in Sword and Shield. Thanks to Legendary S stats worthy of its status as your reward for playing through Gen 8's first DLC, as well as incredible signature moves that always crit, Urshifu was already looking like one of the best fighting types VGC had ever seen. Its signature ability, Unseen Fist, left no doubt that this dude would go down as VGC's fighting type GOAT. Unseen Fist makes Urshifu's contact moves, including its signature moves and just about every coverage move it would ever consider running outside of maybe Rock Slide, go through Protect, the move that defensive play in VGC completely revolves around. And yeah, somehow this actually proved manageable in the late days of Generation 8 VGC. Urshifu hardly showed up at Worlds 2022, where it had to contend with legendaries like Zacian, Calyrex Shadow Rider, and a Pokemon that might as well be legendary in VGC, Incineroar. All of these monsters had strong matchups against Urshifu, and there was also the slightest bit of counterplay to Unseen Fist. A Dynamax Pokemon could use Max Guard to block Urshifu's attacks. The fear was, with both the legendaries that stood up to it and the Gen 8 mechanics that Unseen Fist was clearly designed around gone, that there would be nothing to stop Urshifu from running the meta. And, well, that fear was exactly right. Worlds 2023 was Urshifu's first legal tournament in Gen 9 VGC, and lo and behold, it was on 20 of the 26 teams to qualify for Top Cut, including every single one of the top 8. Not even the introduction of more and more powerful Pokemon in the first DLC, the Teal Mask, could push Urshifu out of the meta. After a couple of events, it looked like Urshifu was giving way, only appearing on about 1/3 of Top Cut teams. But trainers swiftly realized there still wasn't that much in the meta that could deal with the combination of Tailwind and massive unprotectable attacks. Urshifu's top level usage shot back up once again, appearing on over half of teams in Day 2 at Lille Regionals, Toronto Regionals, and the Latin America International Championships. That pace would not slow down as Regulation E continued. Urshifu has two forms, the fighting Water-type Rapid Strike form, and the fighting Dark-type Single Strike form. For a few reasons, the metagame gravitated towards the Rapid Strike form. Significantly. Rapid Strike's multi-hit signature move in Surging Strikes could beat Focus Sashes, where Single Strike's signature move in Wicked Blow could not. Rapid Strike's priority attack in Aqua Jet didn't require winning a mind game like Single Strike's Sucker Punch could. Rapid Strike also had Weather Synergy. It could stack Rain's 1.5 times damage multiplier on top of same type attack bonus, Terrastalization's attack bonuses, item bonuses like Choice Band and Mystic Water, and the guaranteed crits of Surging Strikes to deal ridiculous damage. Yeah, Single Strike had items like Black Glasses and Dreadplate, but no weather or terrain to bring its Wicked Blows to such heights. And oh yeah, there was also this thing. Okay, so yeah, Rapid Strike Urshifu was also weak to Fluttermane's ridiculously strong Fairy-type attacks. But Rapid Strike's strategy revolved around Water Terra, which would leave Fluttermane without a way to hit it for super effective damage unless it was running the relatively rare coverage moves in Thunderbolt or Energy Ball. If Single Strike wanted to avoid Flutter's Fairy attacks, it would have to use a defensive Terra type like Poison and forfeit the extra boost Terra grants to same type attacks on its Wicked Blows and Sucker Punches. All of a sudden, the power that made Rapid Strike so strong was limited for Single Strike. With Fluttermane scaring so many trainers away from Dark Terra, Single Strike couldn't separate itself from Dark-type threats like King Gambit in the way that Rapid Strike differentiated itself from the previous big-time physical water threat, Palafin. Were you wondering where all the Palafins had gone? Well, yeah, there's your answer. It's right there. Literally right there. We talked about Day 2 usage, but what about top 8s? Urshifu's dominance was even more stark. At every single Regulation E tournament, and I mean every single one, at least 2 Urshifus have placed top 8, and at every tournament held outside of Brisbane, Australia, Urshifu has finished no worse than 2nd with at least half of top 8 including that bear. And if we're being completely honest, this dominance wouldn't look that much different if you straight up took Single Strike Urshifu out of the game. Prior to the San Antonio Regionals in December, 29 of the 35 Urshifus to make top 8 were Rapid Strike. It was less likely for the Urshifu you saw in a top 8 to be Single Strike than it was for your Iron Bundle to miss its next Hydro Pump. Oof, better luck next time, trainer. 6 of the past 8 regional winners had included Rapid Strike, as had 5 of the past 8 runner-ups. Honestly, this was Single Strike's most obvious weakness when team building. Using it meant you couldn't use Rapid Strike. And why change what was working? Okay, back to Giovanni Costa. He was a believer in Single Strike Urshifu ever since the format's beginning. He took it to Sacramento Regionals, the second tournament of Regulation E. There, he was the second highest placing Single Strike player, finishing in top 16. That's pretty good. Now, mind you, it was also below 4 Rapid Strike Urshifu players, including runner-up and current NA Championship points leader Riley Factura. Giovanni wound up just 1 round away from qualifying for Top Cut, and honestly, his team was slightly ahead of its time. It takes time for metagames to evolve. There were just about 6 months separating Peoria, the first Regulation E regional, from San Antonio, which took place in mid-December. San Antonio was also the first regional in North America since Toronto in October, and the first in the United States since Sacramento, which just so happened to also be the last tournament Giovanni had attended. In that time, players had the chance to go back to the drawing board and rebuild their teams. Giovanni, though, wasn't the one to go back to the drawing board. His team sheet for San Antonio had exactly 3 changes. His Ogerpon Wellspring swapped out Hornleech for the more powerful Woodhammer. His Specs Goldengo swapped out Power Gem for Psyshock, giving it a way to hit poison types for super effective damage. And his Urshifu got a nickname. But everybody else was searching for answers to a different unbearable force in the metagame. Throughout Regulation E, anti-Rapid Strike technology emerged. And behold, the technology in question. LAIC kicked off a Rocky Helmet renaissance driven primarily by 2 Pokémon, Tornadus and Amoonguss. The Mushroom has used Rocky Helmet on and off throughout its VGC career, as it can combine Rocky Helmet contact damage with Rage Powder as a way to deal damage without even clicking an actual damage move. That was a particularly nice way of dealing with Urshifu's surging strikes, as it would resist the attack and do more damage back to the Urshifu from the helmet than it would take from the strikes, all while protecting its partner. Sinistcha would become a popular Rocky Helmet user at the ensuing European regionals in Gdansk and Stuttgart thanks to the same combination. Tornadus, meanwhile, resisted Urshifu's fighting moves and often presented opposing Rapid Strike players with a dilemma. If they wanted to deal any serious damage to Tornadus, they would have to send a surging strike straight to the helmet, taking nearly half a life bar in the process. Single Strike Urshifu finally had a huge advantage. They could send wicked blows into Rocky Helmets with hardly a second thought. The damage wasn't resisted, and while it wasn't fun to have your Focus Sash broken by Rocky Helmet, Urshifu was bulky enough to shrug off many neutral hits after the chip damage. The other Rocky Helmet users that had arisen, like Sinistcha and Salamence, similarly couldn't resist Wicked Blow the way they resisted Rapid Strike's combination of close combat and surging strikes. Another trend that was looking good for Giovanni's continued faith in Single Strike. Slowly but surely, Flutter main was dropping off. Flutter was on 54% of teams when Giovanni grinded out a 10-4 record in Swiss play at Sacramento. It was on 42% of teams to make top 256 at San Antonio. Over a typical 14-round tournament, that means Giovanni would see 1.7 fewer Flutter mains on average. Wait, how do you get 0.7 of a Flutter main? Maybe some questions are better left unanswered. But the point still stands. The odds of dodging Single Strike's least favorable matchup were much better this time around. Now, Giovanni's team had more modes than just relying on Urshifu to break the game with huge damage. Farigiraf and Iron Hands combined to give him a powerful Trick Room approach. Iron Hands has been a VGC staple since its introduction in Regulation B, and Farigiraf also offers a way to keep Urshifu safe from priority attacks. His Flutter main was a more supportive version than the Choice Specs variant that has been most popular in Regulation E. This one carried booster energy to ensure it would be the fastest thing on the field in most situations, and Icy Wind to help its teammates, mostly Urshifu, go first. Giovanni's Goldengo also loved to take advantage of speed control, giving him huge bursts of power and a way to clear opposing fairy types that would attempt to stymie Single Strike from the field. Ogerpon Wellstring could also throw down some powerful Ivy Cudgels behind the Icy Wind support. Even if it wasn't faster, it could offer critical defensive support through Follow Me and Water Absorb. This was one answer to opposing Rapid Strikes. The team could function without Urshifu, but the team was at its strongest when Urshifu was on the field, threatening to break through protects with Wicked Blow or KO with Sucker Punch before opposing Pokemon could even move. It kept trainers on the back foot, as evidenced by his win over Zach Emerzian at Sacramento. In this set, Giovanni even showcased his single strike's ability to deal with the Flutter Mane problem, using Sucker Punch to deal massive damage and allow its partner, Giovanni's faster Flutter Mane, to take down the opponents before it could move. At Sacramento, Gio came close to top cut but was stopped by a very creative Weezing team piloted by Alex Underhill. Shutting off Unseen Fist with Weezing's neutralizing gas ability made Urshifu much more manageable, but Gio was still extremely close to taking the win in that Game 3 set and advancing to a win and in for top cut. There was a reason to believe San Antonio would be a more favorable environment for his team. The post-LAIC metagame had oriented itself so hard against Urshifu Rapid Strike that it left an opening for Giovanni to roll through San Antonio with his single strike. Teams were loading up on water resist. It wasn't just Pokemon who could wall Rapid Strike like Sinistcha and Salamence that were starting to rise. Terra types like Dragon were becoming more and more prominent. Anything to reduce that water type damage coming in. And that left room for Dark type Urshifu to swing with reckless abandon. We didn't see Giovanni on stream at San Antonio until he had already made it to top 4. In Game 1 against Joseph Ugarte, Urshifu stayed on the bench for Giovanni, the last time it would do so in this tournament. Instead, Giovanni tried to use his Iron Hands as the counter to Joseph's offensive threats of Chi-Pao, King Gambit, and Rapid Strike Urshifu. And it was looking pretty rough. Joseph's King Gambit had a Dragon Terra type, which made it much harder for Iron Hands to deal with the situation now that its Drain Punch was neutral and its Wild Charge was resisted. Okay, well, at least it was looking rough until Giovanni's Terra Steel Golden Go saved it with a critical hit Make It Rain into Joseph's Urshifu. This is part of what championship runs are made of after all, but Gio knew the same plan wasn't going to cut it in Game 2. Even though he won the game, it was clear he was the one who had to adapt here. Giovanni's adaptation to bring Urshifu may not have looked like it did much for him right away. Joseph saw his King Gambit staring down a sure one-hit KO close combat and immediately clicked the Terra button. Gio's Urshifu sent the close combat into the newly Dragon-type King Gambit for just under half damage, lost his Focus Sash and all but one of his HP to Aerial Ace, and then fainted to King Gambit's Iron Head. Pretty bad turn for Gio, right? It may have looked that way, but caster Len Duel saw through it right away.
Yeah, on its face, a really strong trade for Joe, right? You spend 40% of King Gambit for the KO on Urshifu, but again, you have to wonder if that just plays into Gio's hand, because Golden Go hits the field now with King Gambit already weakened, with the Throw next to it to prevent Sucker Punch, and with the Steel typing removed. So there's no.
This was the tension created by Gio's combination of heavy hitters, Urshifu and Golden Go. Yes, King Gambit was free from super effective fighting type damage now, but King Gambit had lost critical resistances. Not only was Golden Go free to hit it for neutral steel type damage now, but Farigiraf's Hyper Voice and Psyshock combo had been entirely walled by the Steel Dark combination. Joe was somehow able to play around the Make It Rain, but he was not able to play around the second big time spread damage move Giovanni's team threatened, Farigiraf's Hyper Voice. Now dealing neutral damage, it was able to KO the King Gambit and send Giovanni into the finals. Gio had dodged the fairy types that threatened single strike in top cut so far. He had one of the two Fluttermanes in top 8, and the other player with it, Justin Burns, had fallen in the other semifinal right after Gio punched his ticket for his first ever regional finals. That means Giovanni's finals opponent, Raghav Malavia, didn't have it either. But Raghav had a fairy type that could be an even bigger problem for his single strike Urshifu, Clefairy. Single Strike had a great matchup into the rest of Raghav's team, threatening Hisuian Arcanine and King Gambit with super effective damage. The remaining three, Landorus Incarnate, Rillaboom, and Ogerpon Wellspring, were all susceptible to Wicked Blow, with no way to defensively Terrasilize to resist it. Raghav was impressively ready for Giovanni's Golden Go in Game 1. They caught Gio going for the Icy Wind and Make It Rain combination, switching in King Gambit and protecting Clefairy. Not only did this lower Golden Go's special attack in exchange for minimal damage on the King Gambit, it also earned King Gambit a 2-stage attack boost thanks to its ability Defiant, activating on the Icy Wind speed drop. Raghav was in a great position. But in Urshifu Single Strike, Giovanni had one of the few Pokemon who could actually stand up to the boosted Dark-type attacks of King Gambit. With a quadruple Dark Resist, Single Strike could take even a critical Sucker Punch from this boosted King without having to fear an incoming Grassy Glide from its partner Rillaboom taking it out on its next unprotected turn. King Gambit's Iron Head would hit hard, but they couldn't afford to let Urshifu swing Fist and KO with a close combat. Thanks to some smart protects and the speed advantage, Gio was able to stall out Raghav's King Gambit and bring things down to a 2v2. His Urshifu and Fluttermane against Raghav's Rillaboom and Landorus. Just about anything else besides Single Strike would have fallen to a combination of boosted Sucker Punch and Grassy Glide. But instead, with Urshifu healthy enough to survive, Raghav felt compelled to send Grassy Glide into Fluttermane instead, which would allow them to fish for a double KO with Landorus' Sandsear Storm. Would it double connect and win the game for Raghav? We'll never know, because this is what happened.
Landorus completely taken out. The critical hit on the Rillaboom.
The double crit!
The double crit!
What?
Lando's down! No way! That is not low base power anymore when you get a double crit Icy Wind.
Oh, that is insane.
And
that's
here
exactly
is the
what
wicked
you
blow
needed.
at half HP on the Rillaboom. There's the critical hit we all expected, since that always critically strikes.
Oh my goodness.
Giovanni Costa absolutely bringing that back from the clutches of defeat to have a victory game one.
What was that?
One more game separated Giovanni from his first regional championship. Both players opened with the same leads. Once again, Giovanni went for the same turn 1 play, Icy Wind, to ensure Golden Go could go next and unleash a full power Terra Steel Make It Rain. He wasn't afraid of the exact same play that put Rogov in a pretty strong position in game 1, but Rogov didn't make the switch. They terrestrialized Landorus to poison instead, trying to survive the double target. Giovanni would say after the set that he wasn't confident these 2 hits would be enough thanks to the defensive boost provided by Clefairy's Friend Guard, but they were. Gio just had to play solid from here to finish the job, and he did exactly that. He didn't even need to bring out his Urshifu for the final game. It did its job though. Rogov didn't switch in their King Gambit on turn 1 because they didn't bring it to the battle at all. And you can probably chalk that up to the strength of the Urshifu in preventing it from dealing meaningful damage even after a boost. With that, Giovanni earned the regional championship he had been searching for since 2016. Not only that, he had done it with the forgotten form of Scarlet and Violet's most dominant Pokemon, a form that had topped out at top 4 in 8 previous Regulation E regional championships. Everything about Regulation E was screaming at trainers, you must pick Rapid Strike Urshifu if you want to win. Most listened, and the top trainers were proving that wisdom right over and over again. It would have been easy enough for Giovanni to give up on the single strike dream for San Antonio, scrap the team that had brought him so close to top 8 at Sacramento, and switch over to the Rapid Strike wave. But instead, he kept believing, and as the meta shifted to counter the Rapid Strikes, he was ready to pounce on the holes these adaptations left on teams. So, is Rapid Strike just done? Hardly. 5 of them made top 8 in San Antonio, and that's even after trainers threw the kitchen sink at it to try and stop it. They just couldn't break through in Top Cut this time. But Giovanni did show us something to end the year. Even when a specific team or Pokemon is dominant, sometimes it's worth believing in your early meta call. He just had to wait for everybody else to catch up before he could show it. Giovanni's win marked the end of Regulation E play, so we don't have much of an idea if he would have been a trendsetter for future events in the format. But he definitely did see the future. As we moved into play in Regulation F, which introduced the new Pokemon from the Indigo Disc DLC, slowly but surely, Single Strike had been overtaking Rapid Strike. The previously overlooked Dark form was used much more often in Day 2 at both Charlotte and Liverpool, the last 2 events of January 2024. Rapid Strike Urshifu is hardly dead. It's on the team Wolf Glick built that won under his piloting at Charlotte and under Antonio Sanchez's piloting in Liverpool. But the Day 2 stats at Liverpool are striking, no pun intended. Of the 55 Day 2 qualifiers, 23 used Single Strike Urshifu and just 7 used Rapid Strike. Maybe Giovanni really did start a revolution.
It doesn't go towards Fluttermane. Instead, it's into Urshifu to break the Focus Sash. That's a critical hit as well, so it's a lot of damage. Close combat on a low HP King Gambit. It secures the knockout, but at the cost of lowering both of Urshifu's defenses by 1 stage.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe and give it a like, and let us know in the comments what other stories in Pokemon you want us to tell. See you next time.